welcome back everyone to the Data Science Hangout, and I hope you're having a great week. Also, just want to say hello to anyone that's joining for the first time too. It's great to meet you. I'm Rachel, and I'm the host of the Data Science Hangout. And so this is an open space for the whole data science community to connect and chat about data science leadership, questions you're facing, what's going on in the world of data science. So if you ever want to go back and maybe rewatch some of the older sessions or share this with someone who's missed it, it'll be recorded and shared up to the RStudio YouTube as well. But we really want this to be a space where everybody can participate and we can hear from everyone. So there's 3 ways you can ask questions. You can jump in live and raise your hand on Zoom. You could put questions in the Zoom chat. And if you're like in a coffee shop or something, or you don't want to read it out loud, you can put a little star there and I'll know to read that one too. But we also have a Slido link where you can ask questions anonymously. And Tyler's going to share that in the chat in just a moment. But I do just want to reiterate that we'd love to hear from everyone, no matter your level of experience or area of work as well. But I'm so happy to be joined by my co-host for today, Prabha. Prabha's a Senior Director of Analytics and Supply Chain Solutions at Flex. And Prabha, I'd love to just kind of turn it over to you for a minute to have you introduce yourself and maybe share a little bit about the work that you do on your team.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Prabha. I'm based in Austin, Texas. I work for Flex. Flex is a fairly large company, largely unknown because we are a contract manufacturing company. We mainly do manufacturing in the electronic space. So I am part of the supply chain organization at Flex, and I lead data and analytics for the supply chain organization. Luckily or unfortunately, in the last couple of years, I can say the word supply chain and everybody knows what I mean or what I do. Prior to that, I'd have to explain what supply chain means. That hurdle has been removed in the last couple of years. My team does data and analytics. I have been with Flex for almost 15 years now. I have a cross-functional team, data scientists, analysts, software developers, and we provide data and analytic solutions for Flex. So that's what I do. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Prabha. And while we're waiting for questions to come in from everyone, I'd love to ask you, what is something that you're most excited about in data science right now?
In the last 1.5 or maybe even 2-3 years, I'm quite excited about the level of acceptance from the executives and top management that data and analytics can bring value. People hear about Google and big data and machine learning, all of that's been going on for about 10 years. The COVID pandemic in the last 2 years has accelerated that, specifically for Flex, because we are a global manufacturing and supply chain company. Supply chain is very data intensive, and so that helps to get the buy-in. But just beyond Flex, I talk to my peers in other industries and companies. There is a growing acceptance that data analytics, data science can bring value to the top line, to the bottom line of a company. Executives are asking for it. We want executives to ask tough and hard questions that we can answer with data and data science. On the flip side of it, there is more recognition that, hey, let's do some good data science work that can help define strategy. So that circle, I see more acceptance within Flex, but also talking to peers and friends and network across industries and companies. So that's, there is recognition and there is a high growth opportunity and acceptance from key decision makers.
That's great. And to maybe help us all kind of understand a little bit more about some of the projects that you work on, could you kind of give us an example of maybe one that you're most excited about or something that maybe got the most recognition across the company?
Yeah, so I'll talk about two projects. One, they're at different life cycle stages. The first one is a more mature, say, project. At Flex, we make a lot of electronics things. We make things for Amazon, Google, Cisco's of the world. So we buy about 3 different, I mean, think of your laptop or your mobile phone, right? A mobile phone is typically made up of 200 different SKUs or components. So Flex in total buys about 3 million unique components, ICs, capacitors, plastic parts, and so forth. So this project is looking at the set of parts that we buy and saying what should be the correct pricing that Flex pays for each of these parts, right? So that's been one of our, I would call it our flagship success project. And we made many millions of dollars in that project over the last 3 years. That it is, even in a big, large company like Flex, the amount of money that we have made has helped get the attention of senior executives so that they are paying attention to data and analytics can help. Now, a second project that I would like to talk about is it's in, say, much in a, an infancy or child status of its growth. That is market sensing, right? Market sensing, whether it is by web scraping or subscribing to external market data, and giving the functional and leadership teams, what is it looking ahead? So these are like, because of this supply chain market constraint, the question in the organization is more on what is in store, what the future certainty or uncertainty. People are more interested to learn about it. It's not just my team, but the leadership team at Flex have said, hey, we want to get more real-time data. We want to look ahead. We want to be able to make decisions. And from a data science and analytics function area of growing that within an organization, I think it's important to get that first or second or third wins, build that trust with your partners, and then take it from there. Yeah.
That's awesome, Prabha. And I guess that can be seen as an upside of COVID too, that now everyone is so much more familiar with supply chain.
Yes. Well, we've all heard of, we're not able to make enough cars to keep up with the demand because we need more IC chips in cars. Every product that Flex makes has semiconductor chips in it because we mainly do it. And we live, me and my colleagues in the supply chain organization live that 8 hours a day.
Zach, I see that you had put a question into the Zoom chat, and I'd love to have you ask that one live.
Yeah, sure. So just to expand on the question a bit more, you talked about how you've been using data for around 10 years with supply chains. I presume that was about getting the just-in-time model, like where your supply just arrives literally just before it needs to be used, and therefore you're not having all that storage cost. How has that changed with COVID? And because of course we all know about the delays that the supply chain's having. Is there a change in thought about how just-in-time model may not work because customers aren't happy with it not arriving in time? Are you thinking about putting more like time between arrival and usage?
That is a great question. Yes, there is consent. So the just-in-time model came about with, say, Dell and other big companies optimizing on cost, right? Now, even prior to COVID, the optimizing on cost was do all the manufacturing in a low cost region. You're optimizing on cost and store inventory somewhere to supply goods. That model worked, it's been around for 15, 20 years. And even prior to COVID, the low cost countries are not that low cost anymore. So that thinking of, it's not just in time, but other strategies in manufacturing and supply chain that are associated with it. That thinking has been changing in the last 10 years. And with COVID, that cost optimization of the supply chain, which used to drive everything else, has gone lower in importance. So that is also where the decision makers and the executives want more data to balance their decision and not just a decision being made on one parameter.
Very interesting, thank you.
I know you talked a little bit about like the business coming to you with more and more questions now, or wanting to see like what's coming down the road. And I was wondering, what are some of the effective strategies to kind of build that collaboration and partnership with the business?
I will stress upon the word partnership, right? And it's a struggle. It is a struggle and a fight within a large organization to say, hey, an IT and an analytics team, I want to be an equal. So the business teams potentially have the flaw of looking at IT and analytics teams as service providers. I think that's the first, first battle that we have, that I have fought, and I think is fundamental. We have to be equal partners. I think have the honest conversation with your partners to say we are partners, which means you tell us what to do, and we also have the power to tell what needs to be done by you, and create common goals. The common goals, I think, enables this collaboration and partnership. Define upfront what is success for the company, and that is few steps beyond model development and model deployment. We get caught a lot in, the analytics and data science community gets caught a lot in the new technology or, deep learning, what is the next cool thing to do. However, the business value created by a descriptive analytics dashboard, like $1 created by a descriptive analytics dashboard, is the same as $1 created by a deep learning model. So and where I'm trying to get to is set what the goals will be different for an analytics team versus a business team. The business team will be focused on dollars. Now set what those criteria of success is that enables collaboration and partnership. How the descriptive analytics or prescriptive or predictive analytics is the how part of how we get there. In my head, well, me and my team, we are not a research team. We do some research, but we are an applied analytics data science organization. For Flex, and I'm guessing this is true for 90 or a vast majority of companies out there, analytics is a means to an end. If your focus is for yourself and your company is research focused, then that statement does not hold true. For all other organization, analytics, data and analytics is a means to an end.
Thank you, Prabha. And I just want to remind everyone too, if you want to ask questions on Slido, Tyler just reshared the link. But I see Amziani, and apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name, that you asked a great question about a Datathon that you're participating in, and would love to have you ask that question. I'd be happy to read it out loud too. And if you want to jump in with any other context, feel free to. But the question was, hi, I'm an aspiring data scientist and I'm participating in a Datathon. And while going through the resources, I find myself diving into different things that sometimes aren't related to what I need to do. Even when trying to do personal data projects and then get overwhelmed. So the question is around, how do you stay focused and what's a good plan to learn data science?
Does the person who asked the question, are they a student? Do they work for a company? I want to understand the context of the question to help to answer it in a better way. Is the person online?
They're online. If you feel comfortable jumping in, feel free to add context there, or you can put it into the chat too. You said they're a data analyst with experience with Python and SQL.
Okay. So if you are a practitioner or an individual consulting person, then you want to have value in learning different things, right? So you're adding more arrows to your arsenal or quiver. Again, and if you are working for an organization, I think it goes back to this common definition of success, along with your partners in the business teams. Whether it is Python, SQL, R, Julia, Go, whatever it is, I think that is irrelevant when you look at it from a business perspective and context. It is a means to an end. Is the analytics that is the output of the data science process? Is it giving insights to the decision makers something new, and then that they can base their strategy in a more robust way? So I think the context is important. And I'm part data scientist. I have data scientists in my team and software developers, and it depends on personal interest, right? So there are people in my team who want to understand the business context and want to learn they want to spend time on these things. There are software developers and data scientists who want to spend more of their time coding and don't want to be in meetings and don't want to talk to the business teams. They don't care to learn. And to some extent, it is a personal preference. But I think to be successful in a large enterprise or organization, there needs to be the contextual element, and that needs to get represented within the team that gives the output to meet business goals. That's how I would, the two different options, that's how I would characterize where they should focus their time on.
Thank you. I feel like I have a similar experience with that too. Like if you're trying to solve a specific problem or question and you're a beginner, like I am as well, you sometimes can get overwhelmed with all the different directions that you could possibly go with that, and then get sidetracked by so many like different processes you could take or different packages. Or I see, Christian, you had a comment on
Rachel,
getting sidetracked.
One thing I'd like to add to it, right?
Yeah.
So, even if personally, as a data scientist, you don't want to invest time to understand, say, the domain expertise, that's okay. But are you organizing your project team such that that expertise is covered? And let's say, we work in the supply chain industry, say procurement or buying things. As part of this successful project team that we made all this money from, there are procurement experts here in that team. So they bring that knowledge, and that common definition of success is they are contributing to it, and that helps. So even if individually you make the choice, or a data scientist makes the choice that I want to spend more time learning new data science things, please make sure that the project team, those skill sets and capabilities are covered.
Definitely. But I see there's a great conversation happening in the chat as well on this topic. And Christian, I was wondering if you might be willing to share what you put into the chat as well.
Sure. Yeah. So just from my perspective, right? And it is a little vague because I don't know exactly what you're getting sidetracked on, right? If you're working on data and then you're all of a sudden sidetracked by a video game, that's bad. If you're working on data and you find a quirk in your data, right, that maybe isn't necessarily related to that specific question you're trying to solve, that's not bad. You've actually just found something I encourage my analysts to explore those things. Most successful data scientists that I know of are curious people by nature anyway, and you can end up driving more value. And you can actually pull this back a little bit to, I've found coming back with little extra pieces like that. If I'm going through and somebody asks me to solve a question for them, I can solve that. But then I also found this extra little quirk. And then I come back and I say, hey, by the way, did you know this? And we could do that. That you can really build a really strong partnership that way, right? We're always walking a tricky line because data, to some extent, always is going to be a customer service, but we are not Google Assistant. We're not Alexa. We're not Siri, right? You can't just poke us with a stick, ask us to do something. We still have to use our brains and come back. So we're always walking that line. And that's one of the ways we can do it is by giving a great answer, but then also giving extra information that they didn't even know they wanted, but we found.
I love that, Christian. Thank you so much. I'm going to pause for a second to see if anyone else wants to jump in too.
I can jump in.
Sure.
Go ahead, Zach.
I was going to say, as I've talked about it a couple of times, like I'm in the same sort of place where I'm new to this. I'm always looking to learn, and I'm very much someone that's always been sidetracked, good and badly. I will always be sidetracked. I think the important thing is making sure you've got that deadline set and you always have constant reminders. For me, I have an Apple Watch, so of course it says stand up every hour. So I use that as a reminder, am I on track? And if I'm not on, if I'm not on track, is what I'm doing beneficial to me? If it's not, then I will sit back, go back to my plan. But if it is beneficial, then I'll continue it for the next hour and then I'll ask myself again. So that's how me, who always gets distracted, keeps on track. Because of course, deadlines are important because otherwise you won't have that job soon. So yeah, that's how I do it.
Thanks, Zach. Brian, I know you were about to add something too. So I don't want to jump to the next question yet.
I like to sort it out between learning on your own and obviously on the job. To Zach's point, you got to make the deadlines, you got to get the job done. At the same time as to learn something, think about, and I mentioned this when I was in the Hangout, is 45 minutes every day. Do your coursework, do something, learn something. As a data person, you're in a marathon. It's not 6 months. It's not a year. If you want it, this is a career, you need to be learning every day, every week, every month. And it's not going to be huge steps along the way. And so, you take that half hour every day, build a foundation. That's the biggest thing. You need a foundation and a little bit of statistics and a little bit of everything before you can go out and build that project. To use an example, a long time ago when I got into text analytics and NLP, I literally read papers for 3 weeks before I even committed one line of code, because it took so long to just figure out all the different convolutions of the libraries and the terminology that nobody bothered to explain in any of the papers. And finally, when I did it one day, it was like literally 3 weeks later, I did the first tokenization, word cloud and phrase cloud and bigrams, and it all came together. But it wasn't like, I knew how to do that right away, and I was just going to go bang it out in a session, or 2 hours overnight. It was literally 3 weeks of reading every paper I could find out there. And so you have to look at it that way. You're gonna have to spend time, build a foundation. There's no magic bullet. There's no quick sprint. You're in it for a marathon.
Thank you, Brian. I love finding these kind of questions where everybody has different thoughts and tips on them, and we can kind of dive deep into them. And Millie, I saw you had a great recommendation as well, if you wanted to chime in too.
Yeah, right now I'm like in a data science fellowship, so I definitely know the feeling of like learning and feeling like you're getting sidetracked. So these days I've been using the Pomodoro timer. I think like the standard is that you have focus time for like 20, 25 minutes and then 5-minute breaks in between each, and like each little section, and you can do like up to 12 in a day if that's your goal. At least that's what I have. But yeah, I have like section time for like my project work, or if I want to like dig deep into something. Like right now I'm like trying to like work on my own like little professional website. So I set these little tasks and do like a solid 2 hours of work is like I think my limit right now, but it's like a good way to like get a lot of stuff done in a little bit of time, and feel like I'm making progress.
I'll add to it. So personally, that is a challenge for me also, holding attention to do data science work. Actually, in the new year, I did make a resolution that I will not keep my email inbox open all the time. So there are some days where I am adhering to my resolution and I only open email 2-3 times a day. And there are some days where I fail, but that has helped. At work, email has become like a chat. People expect responses in a couple of minutes, but I've told my close collaborators that this is my plan for 2022, and it is, even in the last 1.5 weeks, I see that it has helped. I'm able to do more focused work.
That's awesome. I need to do that too, instead of jumping around from so many things all the time. Thank you, Ziani, for opening up that discussion too. I see, Libby, you had asked a great question earlier as well. Would you want to ask that one live?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can.
Awesome. Okay, so I was wondering if, and I hope I asked this question in an eloquent way. If I don't, please feel free to ask me to elaborate. A lot of the stuff that you were talking about was demand sensing, demand planning, and like, reducing costs for sourcing and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if there has been any analysis done on planner processing, like when you have scenario planning and you have software that planners are using, has there been any analysis on the way that planners use the software so that processes can be made more efficient and timing can be saved and stuff like that? That's been really, really interesting to me. Right now, I'm moving into a role where I'm looking at customer data, customer interaction data. And so coming from where I was this summer, I was at Kinaxis thinking about the way that planners are actually clicking and using and the troubles that they have with their workflows. Has there been any look into that, or is there value there?
Kinaxis is actually is the planning tool used at Flex. But I think are you asking about from a process? Is your question from a process perspective?
Yes,
or is
right.
Okay, so from a process perspective, let me talk about not specific to Kinaxis or not specific to the Kinaxis usage at Flex, but generally using software and adhering to business processes and data analytics and a software application helping in that business process. Like at an even higher level, it is change management. So in a large organization or when you talk to an experienced domain expert who's done their job for a long time based on experience, intrinsic knowledge, just having done that job for 5, 10, 12, 15 years, it is change, where now the data and analytics says, or a piece of software or a computer says, here is the right answer. Just go execute on this right answer, right? So that fundamentally is change management. And it comes, there are many layers to it. There is the individual accepting is probably a wrong word. Individual saying, this computer thing can help me do my job better. Or the other reaction could be, I know to do this job. What is this computer thing telling me? So
Right, yeah.
that's the starting point at an individual level. And then you can, then that set of individuals come to like a team, organization, etc. So it is fundamentally change management. At individual level, it is when it's an individual. Now that at a team level and an organization level, it is change management. And that is dependent on, some teams do it well, some companies do it well, some do not. In my experience, just saying, hey, here is a new piece of software, use it for your work, is a sure way to hit a dead end very soon. That has to be sold both at at executive level and also at executional level, the people who are actually doing the day-to-day job. Does that address your question? I mean, it fundamentally is change management. And
sort of, yeah.
In some extreme case, you just have to take away the old way of doing things and say it's unacceptable, right? That's the very extreme. Like the individual is not able to do their day job the old way. That's the most extreme case. That's the forced case of change management, and that happens. And sometimes it needs to happen. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Part of my question was kind of, is there any analysis done on like adoption rates? Like how many planners are using the tool versus how many are actually changing suggestions that are given to them by an algorithm due to some kind of aversion to that? Like you were saying, like, I know my job better than this computer does.
So we do, we capture data on, there's multiple levels of data capturing going on in our set of tools. The first one, and in each level shows, let's say, a maturity level. The first one is, let's say we introduce a piece of analytics or an application. There are potentially, say, 20 people who do that function, who are that functional group. How many of that 20 use it? How often do they use it? And we know that the expected usage is 100 times a week, because we know the amount of usage or the amount of times that a business process needs to run in the team or in the company. So then we can start measuring from users and usage, what percentage of the usage is happening in the software or analytics in that business process. So that's the first level. We do measure for our applications usage and usage. Then the second level maturity is, it's almost like A/B testing, so to speak. Are the results, what are the KPIs, metrics, and results that are the outputs of the process? These are not, this is not model accuracy. This is not analytics metrics or model metrics. These are business process metrics. Is it changing? Is it better? Then that builds up, that is the effectiveness. Sorry, that's a measure of the effectiveness of the process as it relates to this common goal, right? So that's a next level of maturity. Now these data points start giving us, two, I think there are two, if it is all good, then there are two very, say, high value data points here. One, the business process is enhanced because of the introduction of the software or analytics. Then the second thing is the closed loop process. There are going to be aspects where humans make decisions which the software doesn't know about. I mean, that's the difference between model and reality. Now, developing that closed loop process is really hard. But the more you're able to do that, the better this engine or piece of software becomes. But to be able to do, it's the chicken and the egg problem. To be able to get everybody to contribute to that closed loop, we first have to prove that the process is enhanced by doing so. So those are the multiple layers of, say, multiple hurdles that are crossed. And it is very important to collect data, to collect metadata on your product, on the process, on on the business outcomes.
That was super helpful, Prabha. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabha. And also, I think taking that a bit further, I saw there were some anonymous questions that came in too around working with the business. And one was, how do you measure, understand the business value of your work? So like earlier when you say millions, for example, or like, especially if a data scientist is lower in the org chart, how do they go about measuring that impact?
It's a simple answer. I go back to the first thing I said. We are partners. I do not accept the statement that a data scientist or an IT person is lower in the org chart. To people that I work and have built trust with, I can say it to their face. But in a very extreme case, sometimes I just say, hey, look at your paycheck, look at my paycheck. It says the same company logo on the top. So we're equals, we are colleagues, and we are partners. It is sometimes a hard statement to make, but I have made this statement to my colleagues. And I think we are not a service organization. I think we have to fight for our rightful place as equal partners. So I will not accept the premise that a data scientist or an IT person is lower in the org. Now, I think the first part of the question was, how do we measure success? It's a very simple answer, dollars. At least in a company or in an enterprise, everybody, the capitalism and the company exists to make money. So there is no more common agreement on what success means, right? Analytics is a means to an end. The end is usually, if it is, I would, if I have 3 project proposals and I have to prioritize what my team works on, I give a lot of weightage to which business team who have made the proposals have thought through this problem of what do they want us to do? Are they able to clearly articulate how a model or a piece of software will help them make their business case better? What are the KPIs that they want to measure? I mean, the software application will measure it for them, but they need to tell me, well, business teams are the experts in saying what KPIs are important for a given business process. What the data and analytics can potentially help them to measure what is known to them, but also can help them, they know that, today many business teams know that something is important, but they don't have an easy way to measure it. And data analytics and software can help them. So they can give them the known answers. In some cases, it can also give them the known unknown answers going forward. And I think those are all intermediate steps to final value, which is dollars, right? So if there are multiple projects in front of me, I look at the maturity of the request or the business thinking that goes from request to analytics model to KPIs to dollars. And if a business team comes to me with a more well thought out and articulated proposal, they get the resources, or that is a key point in my decision making for prioritization.
That's super helpful, Prabha. And I was wondering if you do also give feedback to people on their proposals, like, oh, we didn't prioritize this because you didn't make this clear.
Yes. They lose out. There is penalty for them not doing this initial work, that they are not the first in queue.
I know you, oh, I sounded like someone had a question. Is someone going to jump in? I know you mentioned like it's simple. It goes back to the partnership with the business, but I will say making like those relationships and partnerships probably isn't simple for all of us. So I was just wondering, like, what are the most important factors? And this was a question actually earlier on Slido, that help you establish a strong partnership with your business stakeholders?
Time is a very key component. My partners today, when my closest partners in the business teams today were not my partners, say 3, 4, 5 years ago. They were not the same partners that they are today, that they were, say, even a year ago. So you need to give time. I mean, it's with any relationship, it gets stronger with time and trust. And so building trust is, time and trust are very important. But again, demanding to not get subservient, right? You're not a service provider, you're a partner. Establish ground rules with your partners. And like with everything else, I mean, the value you provide, the results will speak for themselves, right? The more, if you're bringing value to them, and then they want more of it. I think getting that trust, and as soon as once that partnership is established, I think another parameter here is the data science team and the IT team become sort of like more controlling of our own destiny, because then we can do the hard skills data science work. And if that is good, then we control our own destiny. So there is a soft skills portion, which is like engaging with them, establishing a working relationship. That is a soft skill thing. Then we get to control our own destiny for a little bit. And then the hard skills kick in, hard data science and analytics skills kick in to establish and grow that.
Thank you, Prabha. And on this topic as well, Mark, I see you put a great point into the chat as well, if you wanted to jump in and maybe share that.
Yeah, sure. Everyone, my name is Mark. I work for a health system as a data analyst in Houston, Texas. And what I mentioned in the chat was that, sometimes part of like the business relationship between the teams, like the business teams and the data science teams, part of that good working relationship is understanding that, what the work you do may only be like one of many factors that play into decisions by the business teams. So I gave an example of like a model says do X and they do Y instead. And oftentimes there's a really good reason for that, and just understanding what that is part of like an ongoing conversation. One example from our work is that we make recommendations so we receive a lot of patient satisfaction surveys. And we make recommendations to different hospitals in our systems for, what individual units should focus on for the upcoming quarter based on looking at like the variable importance on what's driving those patient satisfaction scores. So we get down to the nitty gritty, but like the business leaders, one thing we found is that they like to sometimes ignore that recommendation based on like the most important variables because they want to have consistency across all the different units in their hospital. So that was really helpful for us to understand, is that sometimes, a model says, hey, you should focus on like trying to improve this one specific question. But by providing, all of these different, objectives, it makes it harder for them to improve overall. So having that clear, consistent, one singular message has been super helpful.
Thank you, Mark. That's really helpful.
Thanks for the comment. And it is, the analytics and decision are two separate steps, and they don't always have to be in lockstep with each other.
Siddiqui, and apologies if I'm pronouncing your name wrong as well, but I see you had your hand raised earlier, and I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss you.
Hi. So you can call me Masroor. So I wanted to add a point.
Nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you. So how to make a good partnership? I would like to add 3 points. The first point would be customer first. So whenever you are having a partnership, you treat them as an eternal customer. And then what I try from my side, that I always think for them. If you think for them, they will think that this person is always thinking for me and he's adding value to my business, to my team. And they will always come to you when they have any project per se. So that's a customer first approach. It works everywhere, outside, inside. Second is more like a consultative approach. So most of the time, the other partner, the stakeholders, they don't understand what they want from you. So they will come with a random idea. They have this problem and they want a solution. So rather than thinking from their head, you should give a consultative approach. So when you do that, they think, okay, he's actually adding value to me, and I did not think from this point of view or a vantage point. So then they start trusting you, and you build a trust with them. And what is it for me? So most of the time when we work with like IT, they will always have a problem. Why will I work for them? So if you come with an approach that you also have something, if you help me, you will get this X and Y Z kind of achievement or addition in the project. So when you think from that angle, they will definitely help you. So these are 3 points which I would like to add here.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing those too. And I see you're putting those in the chat as well. I'm just going through to see which questions we had missed from earlier, and I see there was one on.
Rachel, I'd like to add something to what Masroor said, right?
Definitely.
This is presenting to executives and business team, right? Data scientists and IT people, we have to talk the business language when we present, and put the results of the models and the analytics in the perspective of the business language, what it means for the company, what it means for their business process. So we have to learn their language, translate data model and analytics to their language to talk to them. And I think both sides need to make that effort a little bit. And so Masroor touched upon this in using other say criteria and values, but it's very important. Yeah.
I like Christian's comment too, and use colors, lots of colors. They like colors. Prabha, the other question that I saw come in from Slido was, are there common traps that data scientists or data science teams fall into?
It's a broad question. Measure, yeah. So many of you may have seen, like, data science is 3 different, this Venn diagram. There's the coding part of it, there is the math part of it, and then there is the business domain part of it, right? So make sure that all 3 are covered in a project, right? So, and if that's the capability side of it. The other big trap is when, say, executives come and say, hey, can you do something cool with artificial intelligence or machine learning? So that is a solution looking for a problem, and that's a trap, right? Because that has the potential for, like, it has the potential for being find me a needle in a haystack kind of a thing. And you go keep looking for it, and it is ripe for that kind of an engagement to get to project creep, right? So that's actually a very, I'd say that's the very big trap to fall into. The other thing, let me think here. I think it is connected to this find me a needle in the haystack thing. Set a deadline or clear criteria when to stop investing in a project. I think it's a next step to that second point, but I think it's a hard thing to do, but it is almost like a sunk cost thing, but it is a definition and criteria for having that stop.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, just hop in, just add to that comment. I would also say one of the challenges is that sometimes data scientists always want to do the most interesting model to them to help them learn. But it's also sometimes like taking a sledgehammer to try to hang a picture, right? So choosing the right model for the right situation, I think, is one of the traps or downfalls that they fall into.
That's a great point, Scott. And anyone else who has feedback on this question too, feel free to jump in.
I think the one in the chat about visualizations is key. Like, it's about okay, I don't have the most experience, but for me, I found I got asked to do, I believe it was a pie chart, when a pie chart didn't really make sense, because of course it just shows like out of 100%. Actually, you want to be able to try and show more than just the 2D pitch, and you want to try and describe it. So what I did is I did a pie chart, but I also did a different visualization. So they had both options to try and get, this is what you want. So I provide showing that I'm listening to you, but actually this is the way that is much easier to understand. And I can go into much more detail in here and describe this graph in a way that you can understand, the same as the pie chart. And that did help quite a bit with communication wise, because they now know that I listen to them when they ask for stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I love seeing all these recommendations in the chat too, and I know I can't read them all right now, but I always like go through the chat after the fact and want to be better about sharing some of the feedback and links shared through LinkedIn as well. So before I forget to say this later, I wanted to just let you know that I shared a link to a Data Science Hangout community LinkedIn group there, where after each session now we'll start to like summarize like on one question or include some resources that are there too. But just sharing that because I know I will forget to at the end. But Rob Heward, I see you asked a question around delivering value. Would you want to jump in and ask that?
Yeah, I think maybe some of this maybe had been tackled already, but I think sometimes it can be really difficult. And I was just more curious about the trust and value sort of link. And are there specific things, sort of concrete, maybe almost like a recipe that you're following that, or if you can turn it into a recipe for others to follow, what your advice would be?
Dollars is the win all thing. That's the, if you have that, you have everything else. If you are not able to get a clear way to dollars, then business KPIs. What matters to your constituents or your partners? So it's, if I have to rank them, so to speak, in order, dollars is, if you are able to get to that calculation of dollars, great, that's the best case. The second best case is business KPIs, what your partners care about. Then so 1 and 2 are fairly close to each other. Number 3 lags behind in a very far away land is model metrics, how good the model is. So that's how I think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So having a very accurate, cool model does not create value.
Yeah. I think Christian also put in there, so failing fast or delivering some value quickly, because you could have this conversation and come back 3 months later, and as a business executive, I've moved on. I'm already thinking about other things, and you haven't demonstrated that you can actually add value quickly. So that feels like an important part as well.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabha. I just want to make sure that I haven't missed anyone's questions from Slido or the chat as well. So as we get down to the final few minutes here, and we can of course stay on a little bit longer, feel free to just raise your hand or just unmute yourself and jump in too. one question that I love to ask everyone, Prabha, is, are there certain resources, or whether that's books or podcasts, or other events like this that you attend that you'd recommend to us all?
Well, I think from a business perspective value, I can recommend a few books that I've read in the last few years that are not data science books, but it expands my focus of thinking of value and things like that. I would say top of the list would be Prediction Machines. That's a book written by a few professors from, I think, Toronto, a university up in Toronto. Another book I would highly recommend for business value or business value focused reading would be Measure What Matters. That is a book written, I forget the name of the author, but it takes a lot of concepts from productivity management that comes from Andy Grove and from the early years of Intel, from Andy Grove, and how high output management. I would say Prediction Machines and Measure What Matters. They are non-technical books, but help to develop thinking and approaches and methodology for value creation.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, if no one's going to jump in, I have one other question I want to ask you. And I know you said focus on dollars, especially with like selling internally and showing business value. But how do you actually like go about doing that? Like, how do you get to the point of understanding exactly what the dollar value is associated for each project?
That is an agreement that I make with my partners at the beginning of the project. We make, it just has to be a straightforward calculation. It has to be A times B times C or something like that. And then we can clearly measure the A and the B and the C's, right? So for a given project, and if we are not able to get to that upfront, we are not able to agree on the A's and the B's and the C's and the D's, then I know there is a lesser chance of success. If my partner or the business team is clearly able to say, these are the A's, that multiplied by the B's gives us the value. And the current value of A is X1. And if we increase that to X2, that can just get plugged back into the equation. So that is part of that initial scoping and definition of success. Because there are cases where, take this pricing predictions, right? So there are cases where, the model says something and we are able to go negotiate and get a better price. It's really hard to, at that point, say how much of that better outcome for Flex is attributed to model versus the person who's doing the negotiation. So those are all like really hard. And my advice will be spend less effort on splitting the pie at that point. And if you are partners, then you got that value or money together, right? And if you have an agreed upon A times B times C calculation, then that helps. You don't have to have a contention point at that time of how to split the dollars. So as much as possible, create how will you measure success before you start doing the work. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Prabha. That's extremely helpful. I just had something I wanted to ask the group as well before we go, and just wanted to ask everyone if you would feel comfortable inviting someone to join us at the next Hangout. Feel free to share the link with them, which I'll put in the chat. But I'd love if everyone would be able to reach out to someone from an underrepresented group in data science. I love to welcome other people into the conversations as well. And even if that's just one person that we all invite, I think that would make a huge difference. And just wanted to say that. So thank you all for thinking about that. And thank you, Prabha, so much for jumping on and sharing all your insights with us. 1 second, I'm going to share the link.
Rachel, thanks for inviting me, and for the audience, thanks for joining and listening and giving us the time.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of the day.